All right, guys, today's focus is John Kennedy, 1960 to 1963, his domestic program for our country, and ultimately what happens to Kennedy in November of 1963. The man that takes over for him, Lyndon Baines Johnson, his vice president, and his domestic program for our country. We'll start with something that we did when we did the Kennedy in the Cold War. I'll give you the election of 1960 between Republican Richard Nixon. You've seen his resume here, and 42-year-old young, charismatic, energetic John Kennedy. The election results: 4 live televised debates, Nixon versus Kennedy. Again, as the American people watched these, they saw the younger, more energy Kennedy versus the older, worn out Richard Nixon. Results of this, the 1960 election, you can see how close the popular vote was here, and then the electoral vote. Kennedy taking 303 to the Nixon 219. This is very important. Make sure that you get these things down. 2 things here. Kennedy's domestic program will struggle. 1, because he is young, but he has an older conservative Congress to work with. They just don't trust him. He's 42 years old. He's the youngest ever elected president. They just don't trust his ideas. He has some great ideas, but Congress just won't pass those things because they just don't feel that he's qualified enough. Second, he lacks a voter's mandate. I'm going to say that one more time. He lacks a voter's mandate. What that means is 51% of the popular vote went to the Kennedy administration. That meant that 49% voted for Richard Nixon. 49% of the population does not believe in Kennedy. 49% of the population believed in Richard Nixon. That will undermine a lot of things that he tries to do in his domestic program. Those 2 are very important, guys. Make sure that you understand he is young. He has to work with a conservative Congress. And 2, he lacks a voter's mandate. I'll put those in the ed puzzle to make sure that you understand those. Pictures: Kennedy family, Jacqueline Kennedy, Kennedy and his children. All right. Let me go back here. Kennedy's cabinet members, you see his brother standing behind him there. They called themselves the best and the brightest, much like he was. Very young CEOs of businesses. In the back there is Robert McNamara, one of the leaders of the Ford Motor Company, becomes his Secretary of Defense. His brother, Robert Kennedy, becomes his Attorney General. He just surrounded himself with a lot of young, energetic, real intelligent people, and that was his cabinet. He had 2 main goals in his domestic program that he called the New Frontier. He invited Americans in his campaign speech to explore a new frontier with him. There were 2 big focuses on his in his domestic program. 1 was to wage a war on civil rights, and we looked at this with the proposal of the Civil Rights Act. Of course, he couldn't get those things passed because ultimately he dies, and then Lyndon Johnson takes over and does pass the Civil Rights Act. But another was to close the gap or wage a war on poverty. Our country had become very separated. A huge gap between the rich and the poor had started in the 50s, and it only widened. And as a Democrat, this is his focus, to close the gap between the rich and the poor. Talked about Kennedy in the space race. When we did the Cold War, his pledge to the American people was to close the gap in the space race. We create NASA. We funnel tons of money to NASA to finally get a man on the moon by the close of the decade. right, a lot of the stuff here, Kennedy's administration was covered by the Cold War era. Now, November 22nd, 1963. As a class, we're going to watch a film on this. But Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy have decided to start campaigning in Dallas, Texas, one of the states that he needed to make sure that he gained in the 1964 election. He was to attend the governor's mansion. He was then to leave the governor's mansion and come down what you'll see here, Houston Street. As he came down Houston Street, he needs to make the left-hand turn on Elm Street. This whole area here is known as Dealey Plaza in downtown Dallas. And as you look at this animation here, as he makes that left-hand turn, you see the blue car there. Above his right shoulder is the Texas School Book Depository. Let me see if I can find you a better image here. Here you see over here where these three cars and these people are walking on the side over here. That is Elm Street. Then you see the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy decided to ride in an uncovered limousine. And that uncovered limousine, it would be a 3-row limousine. The driver would sit up front. Governor of Texas, Connally, would sit in the 2nd row right in front of Kennedy. And then John Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy would sit in the back. This is the view from the Texas School Book, the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository. As Kennedy makes the left-hand turn down Elm Street, you can see from this perch here, the sniper is going to have a great view of Elm Street. As Kennedy makes the turn down Elm Street, there's one shot fired. That first shot will miss. But through research, what I have found is that first shot caused the motorcade to slow down quite a bit. And we're going to do this as we look at the film, the video. The first shot's fired, the motorcade slows down. The second shot you'll see in the video will connect. It will hit Kennedy in the back of the neck. It'll come out his throat, and in the video you'll see Governor Connally. It'll hit Connally in the back of the left arm. That allows Kennedy's head to move forward. When Kennedy's head moves forward, the third and fatal shot will cause his head ultimately to snap back. There's all kinds of conspiracy theorists out there that say that if the first and the second shot could have come from the sniper's perch there at the Texas School Book Depository, then why does his head snap back with the third shot? That's where all of it is in debate. I'll let you talk about it when we do the Zapruder film. But what we now need to figure out is, who is this man right here? This is Lee Harvey Oswald. A little background knowledge about Lee Harvey Oswald. He served in the Marines. He was dishonorably discharged from the Marines. He tried to defect to the Soviet Union. He renounced his United States citizenship and joined the Soviet Union. He comes back to the United States. He gets a job in Dallas, Texas. And guess where he gets a job? He gets a job as a janitor at the Texas School Book Depository. After the shots are fired, there's kind of a chaos. Oswald used that chaos to run through a nearby neighborhood. A local authority officer trying to find a man that fits Oswald's description approaches him, and Oswald kills that cop and then flees into this theater here. While in this theater, authorities go in, they pull Oswald out. He is arrested, he is questioned, and you can see that during the interrogation process, probably a lot of unspoken cop work went on if you just look at his face there. Now, something interesting here, as Oswald is being transported from the Dallas police office to the state Texas Rangers, a man by the name of Jack Ruby walks up. And Jack Ruby, disguising himself as a reporter, will shoot Oswald in the stomach. And we never get to hear the testifying of Lee Harvey Oswald.